This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to Spouses Talking Houses with husband and wife real estate team Jennifer and Brian Frost. Everything you want to know about buying, selling, investing, and owning property. So let's get real about real estate.
Welcome back to Spouses Talking Houses. I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Andrea.
Andrea is my guest today. Andrea Kenny is a good friend and a colleague. Brian, our spouse, is missing as he is at a home inspection this morning.
Yeah, we're not the talking spouses.
But we could talk about our spouses since they're not here.
Oh, gosh. That I'd be in big trouble for.
Exactly, me too. So today we are going to get real about new construction, and we're going to talk about building a home or buying a new built home. But before we do get to that topic, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the real estate lifestyle. And Andrea and I have collaborated on a few things, and we've got kind of an exciting new development coming up.
We do. We really know that inventory levels are low everywhere in the state. And we're bringing a wonderful new project to Plymouth, New Hampshire. And it's going to be duplex homes, 60 units, and gosh, I'm excited because they're going to be in a really good price range for folks. I think we'll be appealing to a 55-plus group of boomers. And
yeah, absolutely. It'll be one-level living with garages.
Mm-hmm.
All the maintenance is taken care of.
Yeah.
And prices under $200, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And we're really excited to have still the only land left in Bedford. Mm-hmm. That's another thing that Jennifer and I are working on. And that's the preserve at West Bedford. And with 30 lots now and another 30 to come in a few years, I think we're really hoping we can help build the inventory through new construction.
Absolutely. And, I have started to see that for some of my buyers, if they have the patience to wait for new construction, they don't have to compete with multiple offers when they're buying a new home like they are on the resales. And so for the first time ever, I can almost say it might be a little bit cheaper to buy new than to buy a resale.
Maybe not.
It depends on the price point, but yeah.
I think the thing about new is you get exactly what you want, and the problem that we're facing is that costs have gotten so high.
They really have. Yeah.
The builders are saying that costs are just escalating. A frame on a house that's maybe 2,500 square feet is costing $20,000 more this year than it did last year.
Yeah. So materials are up, labor is tight.
Yeah.
The local builders associations for the last 5 to 10 years have been talking about how young people aren't going into the trades.
Exactly.
And so they're seeing their electricians and their plumbers and their framers and all of their subcontractors are aging out of the business.
Yeah.
And who's coming in to replace them?
That's just it. And they can name their price now. Mm-hmm. And they're loyal to the builders that are going to give them a lot of work.
Absolutely.
If you're an individual homeowner looking for an electrician or a plumber, sometimes that's tough to do, or you're on a delayed list to have someone come to the house.
Right. So I thought for this particular episode, we would focus on new developments. If a buyer is going into a new development where there's, multiple houses being built, often in different styles and stages of construction, or if they see a home advertised and it comes as a package. So we call those spec homes.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered, does that mean that the builder is building on speculation, or does that mean the house is being built to the specifications?
Well, a good builder will give the buyer the specifications he anticipates to put in the house. But he is building on speculation that what he builds is going to be what the market wants.
Exactly, yeah.
So that's our job to guide him in that direction. But when and they like it when they can get pretty far along
Yeah.
before they have to choose the colors for tiles and carpets and
Countertops and
Yeah,
flooring.
yeah.
Yeah.
the best thing to do is find a house that's just a little bit beyond framing or insulating. You get to pick the siding or the roof, and that's the whole point. It should be exactly what you want, and it should be fun. It should be
Yes, exactly.
It should be. I mean, everybody stresses over what color they want to live with forever on the color paint in their kitchen, but if you can get to that point where you make decisions, we can help, and the builders are really good about that.
Yeah, they definitely are. And I had 2 buyers recently this year where they were looking in an upper price range. One was in the 500s and one was in the 700s. And in both cases, what we were looking at for resales, they would go in and make changes. But if they had bought new construction, they were able to get exactly what they wanted. So one of them did go for new construction, and it's, they are theoretically going to be closing in November, and we do appear to be on time. But that meant that they had months and months and months and months to wait.
Right.
And the others bought a resale. And I wouldn't be surprised if, 3 to 4 years out, they might decide to build.
Yeah. And the one that bought the resale, I mean, as long as it suits their needs,
Absolutely.
it's a great thing.
Yeah.
But if you're looking in those price ranges, Jennifer, somebody who buys a $500,000 or $700,000 property, if it doesn't actually meet and they want to make changes, the only thing that really gains you any equity is more space.
More space, square footage, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if they're going in to change the countertops and put in brand new appliances and things like that, the cosmetic things don't
They
matter.
maintain the value,
They maintain value.
but they don't add to the value.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing for somebody with a resale home that they want to put to the market is to maintain it. Take care of those appliances and
Right.
mechanics and
Right.
all the things that the next buyer is going to want.
Right.
In other words, if you're not really sincerely going to walk out of that house some point in your life and never go back to sell it, you need to make sure that you've got the perfect property.
So one of the things that I look for when I look at new construction listings is who's the builder? And buyers will ask us, can we meet the builder? Do you know the builder's reputation? I find in this area there's maybe a couple of high volume builders, but other than that, it's mostly they do between 1 and 5 homes a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The shortage of inventory has them really jamming right now. So that custom builder that maybe did 1 to 5 houses a year is doing 10.
Yeah, right.
Right. So, but the building starts in New Hampshire up considerably.
That's good.
But also, so are the prices. The prices are up like 15%.
Yeah. And then, so to check a builder's reputation, one of the things that I will do is I will ask their representative, what other neighborhoods have they done, so we can go take a look at those finished neighborhoods. I find people will ask on Facebook.
I find people will knock on doors.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of times for a house that's on spec, people will knock on doors in the neighborhood because the builder may not have another property for them to see.
Correct. Yeah.
You want to give people their creature comforts when they move into their house and not be annoyed. You've waited a long time for it. So there isn't always something. But I've noticed that the good builders are really working on great websites with great photographs.
Yes. And doing like tours of a finished house before the people move in so that they can see, because it's really hard to buy something that you can't touch, see, smell, feel, walk through.
Yeah.
If you're going into a development, a lot of times there will be a model home, and that may only be one of the floor plans, but it'll show you hopefully some of the type of finish work that they do, and they might have on display some of the choices that you have.
Correct.
Which brings me to, reading plans and specs. That's probably the most important thing for a buyer and an agent.
Absolutely.
Be able to look at the plan, be able to look at that 2D drawing and visualize it in 3D. And I really encourage people to think about, the size of the closets and the location of doors and windows. Because while it's on paper, it can be moved around, and it's really not usually going to affect the framing costs.
No, but if you get it ahead of time.
If you do it ahead of time. But if you try to do it afterwards, it's extremely expensive.
It is, yeah. Knocking out a few frames and changing a doorway, most builders aren't going to get too excited. But when they have to really renovate a design, it costs.
It does. It does, yeah.
And people have to be aware that not everything you see in a model is in the specs.
Correct.
So you have got to read the specs. You have got to understand the plan very clearly with the builder.
And the thing about the specifications too is how carefully are they written? I really love to see them say the brand of the vinyl siding and the gauge of the vinyl siding and which colors are included, because darker, richer colors actually cost more, and sometimes that's an upgrade.
Exactly.
But in other cases, because especially right now with costs going up and materials being hard to get, sometimes the builders don't want to be too specific about exactly what they're using.
Well, I think that they need to be, because, if
you're paying for it.
You're paying for it.
Yeah.
If you're looking to put siding on a house, do you want 4-inch siding clapboard or you want 5-inch?
Right.
You put up the wrong one and it doesn't look like what you expected it to be. Then it's not pleasant. But the good builders are really on top of it. They communicate with the buyers. They communicate with us.
Yes, and they usually have a very good organized system. And as you'd mentioned before, if they always use the same subcontractors, the timing tends to be fairly smooth.
Exactly.
If they are in a situation where they're working with a subcontractor that's on other jobs for other builders, the timing of one guy being thrown off by a few days is going to throw off all of the timing of everybody who comes after them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh,
and then you're rescheduling, and then you're losing time like crazy.
One guy doesn't show up because of an illness or delay on another job or COVID. COVID has thrown a real wrench into things.
Absolutely. I spend a fair amount of time when I look at plans talking to people about windows, closets, laundry rooms, bathrooms. For one thing, there's been this trend of not having windows on the side of the house. And I, from the outside, like to see windows on the side of the house. But then, depending on how you use the room, for furniture placement, you may or may not want that. And I, a lot of times I like to see a pretty basic colonial can be dressed up with some nice, transom windows or a very pretty window accent. And then, just functionality of bathrooms, closets, and laundry rooms. I'm always thinking about, how do you use this space?
A lot of things have to be taken into consideration when they do that. Roof lines.
Yes.
You need an architect if you're going to make serious changes like that, add a window. It's nice to have cross ventilation in a room, but again, you have to have the wall space. But if you, working with an architect, they're going to know. And I know even personally, we had a plan that we loved, and then it had to be re-engineered for snow loads because it was taken out of a plan book.
It was not for New England. Okay,
exactly.
Yeah,
so you can go online and find millions and millions of plans, but whether or not they're going to fit our climate, and they just need to be engineered.
Well, and it's funny too because a lot of the plans for down south don't even have basements.
Exactly. And that's a good point, Jennifer, because a lot of people, I talked with a man from California yesterday who said, boy, the land is expensive in New England. I said, well, it's got to be less than California. He said, oh, yeah. I said, but you know what else? We need to put in in a lot of cases, a septic system,
Well,
that has to have a well that has to have a 75 foot radius around it.
Around it, yep.
And so
A buffer.
there's excavation costs even before you start the building.
Right.
So, and we need to dig a hole for a foundation. So buyers it's not just the price that you see before you can even get to it. And that's why our construction is so much more expensive than, say, something in Georgia or North Carolina.
Exactly. Exactly. And they can build 12 months throughout the year.
Oh, yeah.
They have different weather considerations
Right.
because they have more hurricanes and tornadoes and that, different parts of the country. Usually when I am working with a buyer and they're looking at new construction, there's a base price, which is going to get you that plan and those specifications. I kind of tell people to budget about 5% extra.
Exactly.
What do you do? Is that what you go with?
That's the norm. It's about 5%. But I have had clients who will nail it down right to the penny. So if you're going to build a custom home, and typically in the areas that I've been working, everything is custom.
Right.
Okay. And custom doesn't mean it's extra fancy. It just means it's specific to your taste.
Right. Yeah.
So they will go to the cabinet store and pick out their cabinets. They will look at the granite. They will know that their prices are exact almost.
Yeah, so some builders and developments, you'll go in the specifications, it'll say, hey, you have a choice of cabinet door styles, and you'll go to our model home or our showroom and pick them out, and it'll be, here are 4 different kitchen cabinet doors that are included, and then here are 4 or 5 that would be upgrades. But you are limited to that selection.
Correct.
In other cases, there will be an allowance.
Right.
And let's say you have a $10,000 allowance, and then you're supposed to go to the kitchen designer and to their showroom, and you can spend that money and lay it out
like that.
So fast.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can do that.
When you have allowances, you're going to be able to customize it a lot more, but you are almost guaranteed to go well beyond the allowance because you have the ability to.
If you do, sure. If you don't, you have to know, there are certain things you can maybe cut a few corners on and do them down the road.
Right.
But again, you just do not want to overbuild in a neighborhood like your $500,000 or $700,000 customer who's going to change something in the house. That's only cosmetic.
Exactly. And so, so it's really important, I think, to think ahead about any changes and upgrades, and to also think about, anything you can upgrade now that will save you money later, I would do. So I would do things like heating efficiency. I would do things that are going to last a long time, like flooring, etc. But other things, for example, countertops, tastes will change.
Yes.
And so, you could always do countertops later.
Exactly.
And chances are, even if you splurge and get exactly what you want, after 10, 12, 15 years, you're going to start to think it's time to remodel anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're thinking in our climate, a perfect example is we like to have a generator.
Yes, right.
So they're expensive. That can add a lot of cost at the start. Somewhere between $8,000 and $10,000. So just have the electrical connection put in.
Yeah, just have it ready for it.
Have it ready.
Exactly.
And that's a small amount of money. That's under $1,000.
Yeah.
And then you can be sure that if you need it, you're going to get it.
Yeah, and I look at things like if you have a walkout basement, put in some doors and some daylight windows and all of that in preparation for finishing the basement in the future. Do that now while they're pouring the concrete, while they're framing, because it's more expensive to go in and do it later.
Absolutely.
Sometimes I'll have clients who in the basement will pay an upgrade to have a larger beam in order to have less lolly columns, less support, so that way they have a more open area to be able to finish. That's a relatively inexpensive change.
It's a steel beam. It's,
Right, yeah.
and it's worthwhile.
It's absolutely worthwhile. Whereas some things, you can have the builder do them, but it's cheaper for you to do them yourself.
Correct.
For example, finishing the basement.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
Yeah.
But if you're going to hire a contractor to do it after the fact,
Right.
it'll probably cost more money then too.
Exactly.
But there are a lot of custom builders out there that are very accommodating and ready to work with you. But there are also builders who are saying, this is what we build.
Right.
And if you don't want that, you can change it afterwards.
Right.
Even to a light fixture,
Yes. Yeah.
You want to change the light fixture we give you? Fine.
Right.
You do that afterwards.
I put them in the category of production builders.
Correct.
So they are running kind of a production line.
Yep.
And they have certain floor plans, and they put it in all their neighborhoods. They have certain cabinets. They put it in all their neighborhoods.
Yeah.
They have the same crew. But the thing about those builders is they generally keep to a good schedule.
They do.
Because they have a very specific thing that they do, and they do it over and over and over and over again.
No downtime. No.
Right.
And they make better profit that way.
Of course, yeah.
But we have demanding buyers today in today's market. You can see the sky's the limit for what you can live with now. And we need upgraded, electronics and...
We do, yeah.
Wiring
is very important.
Yeah.
And the thing is wiring while all of the walls are open. I mean, take advantage of that opportunity.
Get a ball of speaker wire and run it through the house yourself.
Exactly.
I thought you and I could even do that. Maybe we could start a business.
As if we don't have enough going on.
Yeah, no kidding.
One thing about upgrades is a lot of times your upgrades need to be paid to the builder separately from the base price and not included in your mortgage. And I think people are not always prepared for that.
Well, they need to be. The contract, the broker that writes that contract should say that any upgrades should be paid for prior to installation. Now, it's more to protect the seller, obviously, or the builder, because you decided on, a purple ceiling fan.
Correct.
That he probably can't sell if, God forbid, anything happens. I think we've been very lucky, that we really have seen very successful builds where people, nobody's walking away. Nobody's like years ago, throwing the keys on the table and walking out. So I think that, the builders are doing a good job. We're, as realtors, giving them the best advice we can. And it's a successful, happy experience.
It is, yeah. One of the things that I always try to warn people about is that your closing date is not guaranteed.
Oh, absolutely. I tell people there is 100 million parts that go into a house. If you think of the least little thing that has to go into it, if the screws in a particular 4x8 board aren't put in right, or somebody took a lunch break and forgot where he left off, something goes wrong, things happen. We know things happen in a car. You get a new car and something can go wrong.
Right.
So it can't always be the blame of the builder, but obviously good builders rectify any problems that come along. And not to digress, but something can go wrong the day after, and it was unanticipated.
Right.
My daughter just sold her car, and she took very good care of it. But the day she delivered it to the new buyer, the rear door handle fell off.
No.
Things like that can happen. So she had to have it fixed. But and it will happen in builds. The hydro seed goes down, and then we have a torrential rainstorm, and the hydro seed is in the road growing, know.
Right.
So lots of, it's life. It's, we just have to take it in stride.
And we have sort of the final walkthrough, can't speak there, but when you're building a new home, you do a punch list at the end, because there are things, the different contractors have come in at different times, and then other contractors have come in after. So sometimes you need to have somebody circle back, and rather than call, it would mess up the schedule to call in every time you see one little thing. So you make a list. It's called the punch list. And then there's also a 1-year warranty, which is mandated by New Hampshire law because nobody's lived in that house yet. And so things will be discovered as you live in the house, as the house settles, as it goes through a full 4 seasons.
Right.
And so the builder should be coming back to you and fixing things under warranty over the course of that year. And again, for scheduling purposes, if it's not an emergency, like your heat's not working, but if it's not an emergency, make a list and then they can come in and take care of multiple things at once.
Most builders will make every effort not to have a punch list at the end.
Right.
And they will do everything they can to not. But
they sort of do their own punch list first. Yeah.
The suppliers are going to warrant their work, the pipes being put together correctly. The manufacturers of the mechanics are going to warranty those items, but the implied law in New Hampshire is that a builder will stand by his structure and his work for 5 years. So, it's important, and the builders give that warranty at closing or as part of their contract.
Yeah, most of them have it all written out.
And it should be specific because there are certain things, if you have a septic system, for example, and you decide to put a garbage disposal on it and grind up, animal fat, that septic system is not going to be warranted at all.
Right.
There are certain things that are intended to work a certain way, and abuse doesn't qualify for a warranty of any kind.
Yeah. And there are some things, that they don't necessarily have control of as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people can buy home warranties.
Yes.
There's all kinds of things like that. But you got to read the fine print because there's certain things that they just will not cover.
Right.
Something maybe that exits the house or, they're not going to cover a warranty on a washing machine and a dryer that are already guaranteed for 3 years or something.
Right, exactly, yeah.
So, but you have to read the fine print. And they're good companies to do it. We don't sell them. You have to be an insurance agent to do that. But,
Yeah.
Good thing to have.
So a lot of people will ask me, should they do a home inspection on a new home?
What's interesting lately, and this may lead to another topic, we do a lot of construction to permanent financing loans, and I encourage them because as a home is built, it goes through phases of inspection by the town.
Right.
So it gets signed off by different departments in the town and then they can't go any further in their building permit until certain things are done. Well, when you're doing a construction loan from a lender, they also have an inspector.
Coming, yes.
Okay.
Doing progress checks, yeah.
Doing progress checks. And I have had people who are building with cash who hire an outside independent contractor. And I like that because, sometimes I can notice if the beam is that way, something.
Right, yeah.
But, lining up certain things or having something happen that's not exactly right, let the experts do it.
Yeah.
The state of New Hampshire issues an approved septic design. Nobody else can do that. You can't get a building permit without one.
Right.
You can't get a certificate of occupancy without all those inspections being done.
Yeah. And when people ask me that, I always say it's your option. The building department is going to come out and they are going to sign off for things to be done to code. And to code means that's for safety.
Yes.
Okay. But does that mean that it was done to best practices? Maybe not. So I've had many a buyer who have it as an option and they put it in their contract and then they decide at the end, because they've watched the whole thing all along, they decide at the end whether they want to have an inspection or not. And then when they do, I've found that, I thought the builder might be a little bit put off by it, and they haven't been. So that's been good.
No, I don't think they will.
Yeah, I think they're proud of their work.
Yeah. And of course, it always depends on personalities.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
But those inspections, even an inspection can hold up a closing. And the builder makes his best effort to get you in on time.
Date. Oh, yeah.
But also, and right now the lenders tend to want to see that CO a week before closing.
Right.
So in that next week, we still have to get title company and everything together. The town is signing off on all those different departments, the fire department, the code department, and whatever else they do. But that can change a closing date by even a few days.
It can. And one of the things that I'll also have people ask me about as far as inspections is, should they test the well water and should they test for radon?
Most builders have to test for potability and water on their building permit.
Yeah, which is a very basic test.
Very basic. Some of them will do the full thing and let you know. Mm-hmm. They don't provide an allowance in their build because they don't know what the weather's going to be until the well is drilled. Mm-hmm. So, you could easily have the water company do that, but it's not built into the price. So anticipate it.
Yeah, the specifications are not going to include water treatment.
Correct.
So if there is a need for a softener, or there's iron or manganese or something like that, my feeling on those items is when everything is just completed, your well hasn't been run enough and your house hasn't been in normal use enough for you to really get a true reading, I think, on the water or on the radon. But maybe within a couple of months, if I had a new home, I would test both after I'd been in the house for a little while.
Yeah, you can test for all the components pretty much right away, because they're going to run the well a lot while it's being built.
Yeah.
They run it out. They may have to chlorinate it to get rid of anything. But
because a lot of times there's sediment with a fresh well.
Well, yeah, and they run that out, But New Hampshire has lots of granite, lots of manganese, lots of iron.
Yep, absolutely.
And so
we've got high mineral content in our water.
Yeah. I have a science lab in my basement.
Me too.
The thing is, on water and on radon, radon's even more different, because on a house for radon air, you really have, from what I've been told, I mean, I would tell everybody, go to DES New Hampshire site and get the details. But a house, you're putting a structure over top of radon daughters. And so what really draws them up is when the house is in operation, when it has heat on, when things are being brought up.
When it's been under construction, it's not under normal circumstances.
Because there's picocuries in the air we breathe every day.
Of course.
Outside. When you encapsulate them underneath a structure, they get stronger. Okay. And they're at one level in the basement, another in the first floor, another in the second floor. Well, in New Hampshire, they want less than 4 picocuries per liter where you sleep, where you're there, all the time.
Right.
So there are great companies that take care of that, very knowledgeable, not the worst thing in the world.
And a lot of builders in their specs in New Hampshire will go ahead and put in the passive radon, which is just the PVC pipe.
Yeah.
Because as long as they're, pouring the slab of the foundation and doing the framing, a lot of times they'll put that PVC pipe in.
They will.
But then if you need to correct for radon, you need to exit it out through the roof and have the fan put on by a remediation
Some
company.
Some of them will even bring the pipe all the way through.
Which makes sense.
However, in my experience with a great company in New Hampshire, sometimes they put the pipe in the wrong place and they need to move it somewhere else.
Oh, of course, because that's not their specialty.
Right. But, and the companies will come in and they really seal up anything. If you have a plumbing fixture in the basement or a planned, eventually you're going to put a bathroom down there, or you have an open pump, those sump pump things, they need to be treated correctly by a mitigator.
Yeah, they do. You need somebody who's a specialist. Yeah. So what's your number one piece of advice for somebody who's looking to buy in a new development?
Hire a realtor.
Yes.
A realtor. Did I say realtor? Realtor. Hire a realtor. Interview the builder. Talk to the builder. Ask every question you possibly can.
If you have that opportunity. If it's a production builder.
Well, he'll still have a manager.
Yeah,
He'll
they
still
should have a
somebody.
site manager. Yeah.
You wanna know how things are done. How you're going to communicate is really important. A lot of builders will like to talk directly to the buyers. Eliminate those multiple.
Oh yeah, because
questions.
then later on the buyer will say, "Oh, we had a conversation and he said he was going to do this."
Exactly.
And there's no record of it anywhere. Yeah.
And the biggest, most important thing I can say, everything has to be in writing.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Everything that's going to go in that house, everything. I mean, there's going to be changes, so you go for a change order.
Right.
But if you have everything in writing, then there's no mistake.
Yeah. He said, she said does not work.
Does not work.
Does not work. Does not work at all.
No.
Yeah. And the other thing that I would say is I forgot what I was going to say. Oh dear.
More about how to pick your builder.
Oh no, you know what it is? So also find out what you can do as far as visiting the site during construction.
Oh, good.
There are very specific rules about that. You shouldn't be showing up unaccompanied. You should not be talking to any of the subs and interfering with their work. So in most, and their insurance companies definitely don't want people just wandering around an active building site. But there usually is some sort of a process where you can come and visit at certain times and go through and see the progress. But showing up every day and getting in the way and
I think appointments are perfect for that.
Exactly.
Talk to the builder and say, listen, can I get with you on a particular thing? And even at the end, you said start a punch list, but kind of keep track on things that you are really, wanting to know about, because you may pick out the kitchen design a certain way and then suddenly remember there's something else about that doesn't work. You're left-handed or you're right-handed or you're, you need different things. So, just communication, open lines.
Absolutely. Tons of communication. And documentation.
And documentation.
So, well, thank you very much for getting
My
real
pleasure.
with us about
My
new
pleasure.
construction. This has been Andrea Kenny and Jennifer Frost here on Spouses Talking Houses, spouseless today.
Spouseless talking. Yeah.
We would ask you to like, subscribe, and share the podcast, and we will talk to you soon.
Music courtesy of the Eric Lindbergh Trio. Please visit his website at www.ericlindberghworld.com. Jennifer and Brian are licensed to practice real estate in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. Brian is also a certified general appraiser in New Hampshire. They are not lawyers, accountants, home inspectors, or therapists. Real estate customs and rules may be different in your area. Each Keller Williams Realty office is independently owned and operated. The Realtor name is trademarked to members of the National Association of Realtors. If you are currently under contract with a real estate agent, this is not intended as a solicitation. Views expressed on this podcast by Jennifer may not be shared by Brian and vice versa, nor are they necessarily the views of Keller Williams Realty.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21, Podcast Café, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.